Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're unpacking a massive paradigm shift on the meaning of true greatness, literally turning the concept completely upside down. We're going to root this right at the beginning with our title, True Greatness in God's Kingdom, and our main verse from the Bible. Matthew 18:13 says, "And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off." This single sentence totally flips the world's definition of greatness on its head, and that is exactly what we're going to dive into today. To give you the big picture first, before we get into the weeds, here is our roadmap. We're going to start with the introduction and historical context, then compare two theories of greatness. Next, we'll look at the evidence for humility, explore God's sovereign pursuit, lay out some practical steps for college students, and finally, wrap up with our final research conclusions.
Okay, let's dive into our first section, Introduction and Historical Context, where we need to understand the baseline of the Bible.
So before getting into the heavy specifics, we absolutely have to establish the cultural reality of the first century. Back then, children had absolutely zero status, none. They didn't hold any power or influence in society, and they were completely 100% dependent on others just to survive. So when Jesus uses a child as the ultimate example of greatness, man, that was a massive disruption to their cultural norms. To a first-century audience, elevating a child like that was a totally radical idea. And that disruption perfectly leads us to Section 2, Two Theories of Greatness, which represents a massive paradigm shift in hierarchy. Let's compare and contrast these two totally different theories. On one hand, you have the world's theory. Think about a highly competitive college culture. Greatness there is all about power, academic rankings, your status in Greek life, and just having this highly visible impact, right? It's all about elevating yourself. But then, look at Jesus' theory. It is the exact opposite. His focus is on humility, having a childlike dependence, and a willingness to do unseen service. In God's kingdom, lowering yourself is actually the path to true greatness.
Let's move right along to Section 3, the evidence for humility, focusing on the main argument from Matthew 18.
This whole conversation gets kicked off by a very revealing question from the disciples in Matthew 18:1. They actually ask, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? It really highlights human nature, doesn't it? Even Jesus' closest friends were essentially jockeying for status and wanting to know who the best was.
But Jesus' answer forms the main argument here. He makes it absolutely clear that greatness in God's kingdom requires changing to become like little children. You have to lower yourself rather than elevate yourself. The core evidence points to the fact that your true identity and worth come from God alone, not from some visible status or how self-sufficient you are. Jesus calls his followers to a completely different posture than the rest of the world.
All right, Section 4, God's sovereign pursuit. Now we're going to look at the parable of the lost sheep. Now, what's really fascinating here is looking at this through the lens of Reformed Calvinism theology. It introduces this concept of sovereign pursuit. This refers to God's irresistible grace and his electing love. It shows us that he actively, intentionally, and sovereignly seeks out the specific individual who has wandered off. He isn't just sitting back like some distant scorekeeper. He is a deeply active shepherd who personally secures his flock. To put that into perspective, let's just break down the math of this parable. 99% of the flock, the 99 sheep, are left behind so he can go after that tiny 1% slice. That single wandering sheep is pursued and found. We as humans tend to focus on the crowd, the big numbers, right? But God's heart is drawn to the individual. He doesn't overlook you just because you're one person. In fact, his joy in finding that one is actually greater than the comfort of having the 99. Let's transition to Section 5, Steps for College Students. We're going to translate all this theology directly into campus life. The research lays out a fantastic step-by-step process for navigating a hyper-competitive college culture. Step 1, actively choose humility in your daily dorm and class interactions. When you feel that urge to chase academic recognition, take a step back. Step 2, willingly serve in unseen or totally unrecognized ways around campus. Don't just build a resume, do the quiet work. And Step 3, really pay attention. Intentionally reach out to peers who might be drifting or disconnected. If they take a step toward God, celebrate it. Which brings us to our final section, number 6, Final Research Conclusions, where we learn to value what he values. To summarize the key findings of this explainer, the clear conclusion of the research is this. First, God measures greatness by humility and childlike dependence, absolutely not by your visible impact. Second, every single individual matters deeply to him, as we just saw with his sovereign pursuit of the one lost sheep. And finally, if we really want to understand true greatness, we have to reflect his heart by valuing what he values and celebrating any steps someone takes toward him.
So, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to reflect on. In what areas of your own life are you most tempted to seek recognition instead of humility? And thinking about God's heart for the individual, who is one wandering person that you can intentionally reach out to this week? Take some time to really think about how you can apply this to your own journey. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.